Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Well, after months and months, WBC mandatory challenger Bermane Stiverne, he has backed off his previous stance and has revealed he has agreed to step aside. That will allow WBC champ Deontay to face another opponent. Stiverne, he has spoken to BWTM Sports channel, link in the description, and he says instead he will now likely be facing Dominic Breazeale on the same November card as Wilder as the co-main event, and Wilder's opponent, well, it's yet to be announced. So there's just a few things here that for me, they don't actually add up, and I'll touch on. The key among them, timing. The timing of this interview is horrible if you're Team Wilder, as it poses more questions than it answers. Remember, Stiverne is just one of the players involved here. So timing. If everything was in place, barring the minor details, Wilder's promoter and the associated parties, well, they would have, after the Stiverne interview, sought to confirm publicly the fight date and opponent for Wilder. They'd want to get out and react to this. Their communications machinery would have been pressed into action, and there would have been all sorts of stuff over social media channels, news websites, and certain material ceded to favoured reporters. So consider this. At the time of this video being published, it's been almost a day since the news of the step aside first broke. And you may have well wondered, just like me, why haven't the boxing websites / wider media been covering this? Why haven't they been running anything on this since the Stiverne interview dropped? So my read on this is because they're still trying to stand the story up. They don't want to go on Stiverne's word alone. So they have likely gone to Wilder's promoters and others to establish the key facts of what's really going on and when. Some of that actually takes time to do, especially if Team Wilder is scrambling around and having to work up some reactive communications material. I'm sure Stiverne, he was likely told to keep quiet about all this until Team Wilder had squared away everything it needed to and was ready to make an announcement. If it's your news, if it's your announcement, you want to be the one out front managing the message. But Stiverne, he has seemingly diverted from his lane and let the cat out of the bag on this one for whatever reason. So all we really know for sure is Bermane Stiverne is going to get some step-aside money to fight Wilder at a later date. It doesn't solve the problem, it just delays it. So his potential opponent instead, it appears to be Dominic Breazeale. But by no means is he categoric about that in the interview. His language did leave some room to move on that. So for me, the unknowns right now include the fight date, the venue, and importantly, who will face Deontay Wilder. We've actually now heard from Stiverne and fellow contender Jarrell Miller in recent days, giving differing dates for Wilder's next fight date. So we've heard the 4th of November and the 11th. And we've also heard differing locations, Brooklyn and Vegas. And I believe the speculation that Luis Ortiz is a lock or a near lock to be Wilder's next opponent, I think that should be taken with a grain of salt right now. This brings me back to timing. In the interview, Stiverne said he didn't think Luis Ortiz would be the opponent, and the smarter thing to do would be to take a Joshua fight, as it's a bigger fight and bigger money. That's exactly where my thinking is at the moment. I think we really do need to pump the brakes on Ortiz potentially being Wilder's next opponent until we know what's actually happening with Joshua's mandatory situation. For anyone who doesn't know, Joshua has been ordered to fight 2 people. 1, WBA mandatory challenger Luis Ortiz, and 2, IBF mandatory Kubrat Pulev. He can only face one at a time. So we've got this whole messy situation going on right now, and it was made a little bit stickier in recent days by Pulev, saying he wanted a full 3 to 4 months to train for his shot at Joshua, and he doesn't want to fight on October 28th. That's the date Joshua's next fight is penciled in for in Wales. So from the outside looking in, surely that would put Ortiz in a better position to face AJ sooner rather than later. But then again, it's boxing. Crazier things happen and nothing is guaranteed. So if the timing, and yes, we're back to timing, is not right for Luis Ortiz to fight Wilder, then who are we actually talking about? because it's fair to say that Luis Ortiz was one of the few guys fans were willing to give Wilder credit for, given his previous modest opposition. Remember, Wilder's been the champ for almost 2 years now. He's had 5 defences in that time, and, well, the opposition has been a little bit pedestrian at times. So if we look at some of the available guys out there that he would get credit for, Alexander Povetkin, well, that's not going to happen because of the PED allegations. Kubrat Pulev, well, he is waiting for his IBF shot. Joseph Parker or Hughie Fury, they're about to fight, and they would have just fought, so that's not likely. Joshua, well, he's fighting around the same time as November, so that's not going to happen. If we're talking about the next level of guys that Wilder would still get some credit for, well, we're probably looking at Dillian Whyte and Jarrell Miller. But even then, are these guys at the top level, or have they just been using their mouths to drive up their image/profile? I'd like to see these fights, I really would, but I'm not sure how much credit or how much they help Deontay Wilder's PR problem. Andy Ruiz, he's another guy with good chops, but he's been inactive all year. I'm not going to count David Haye either because he's injured, and Tony Bellew, well, he's a cruiserweight. So outside of the guys that I've just mentioned, well, we come back to the realm of the guys that Deontay Wilder has been criticised for continually fighting. And you know the guys that are in the top 15, but they're not the best guys. They're solid fighters. And I don't think that's unfair. I mean, Johan Durpa, Chris Arreola, Artis Bilka, Eric Molina, Gerald Washington. Decent opponents, nothing special, nothing career-defining for Wilder there. So Wilder needs a big fight, a defining career fight. So I'm not sure that Bermane Stiverne, who's got no time for Wilder and he wants to reclaim the WBC title, I'm not sure he's done Wilder any favours here in announcing that he's taken the step aside. It would have been appropriate to announce it at the time that a fight announcement was made. But ahead of it, well, I think he's sort of done Wilder, a bit of a disservice. He's kind of done him dirty. I mean, he's dropped it at a time when things are actually seemingly at their messiest for a number of fighters. I think I would favour Brazil in a fight with Stiverne. But then again, Izu Ugono, he proved that Brazil could be hit and hit at will. It also hurt. But he does pack a big punch at the same time, and Ugono certainly found that out. I really hope that they aren't softening us up for a Brazil-Wilder fight, because the fact that his name is in the mix here, mentioned by Stiverne as someone who would be on the card, sometimes those people, they get upgraded to the main fight. That's not something that should happen, or nor would it redeem Wilder in the eyes of fans. And I'm sure you've also heard other speculation. Some fans think Wilder wants easy fights until he gets a cash-out opportunity against Anthony Joshua. I'm not on board with that yet, but I do expect him to square off against credible opponents. And he is the champ, it should be a credible opponent every time. I have no idea why the hell the WBC installed Stiverne, someone who hadn't basically fought in 2 years, he had one fight and he didn't look good in it. They installed him as the mandatory. And now he's getting paid to take a seat for Deontay Wilder to fight someone else. That's a shambles in itself. And we've lost, Deontay Wilder returned earlier this year in February. He's had one fight. And now we're looking at a second fight for 2017 in November. 2 fights a year. Come on. But I think if we see another pedestrian opponent, well, the claims of him holding the belt hostage, they will start to ring louder and somewhat truer. And here's another thing to throw into the mix. You got to think, if Wilder's not going to face a top name next, because that's no guarantee, why would the WBC sign off on a step aside? I'm sure there would be limited interest from the networks in anything that is less than a blockbuster. If you can't get Stiverne Wilder over the line that fight, why would a Brazil Wilder fight be any different? Or someone else who was in that top 15 but below the sort of half a dozen names that we would all actually want to see him in against? Wilder's got talent, he's got power, but we want to see him in there against someone who's good. Put all those tools that you've got to use. We want to see you fighting someone at your level, someone who's going to trouble you. Someone when we go, it's Wilder versus X, we don't really know who the winner's going to be. We can say it's a 50-50 fight. None of the guys you've faced yet, Deontay Wilder, are in that camp, and it's time we see one. I hope we do, because I actually do like you as a fighter, and I want to believe that you're a really top talented guy, but at the moment, it's hard for me to think you're elite until you prove you're elite. So I hope we see a good opponent, but we'll have to wait and see on this one. But I don't think Bermane Stiverne has done Deontay Wilder any favours here. So we'll wait and see. What do you make of this whole mess? Drop a comment, hit like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.